up on Frontiers, we'll let you in on what may be one of Alaska's best-kept secrets, the Sitka Summer Music Festival.
I think you need charisma and showmanship to carry classical music to a new generation.
And a sense of adventure.
My job is to create a vision, a path.
Up next, why Alaska is an international cello player's musical frontier.
Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to our program. Alaska is considered a frontier for many things, but classical music is probably not what usually comes to mind. But a cello player named Zuill Bailey is out to change that. He's here in our studios, and we'll talk with him a little later in our program about his vision for Alaska. But first, a look at his work at the Sitka Summer Music Festival and his dream to make it a place where artistic freedom thrives. We caught up with him in the summer of 2013, Serenading Alaska. As the notes roll off Zuill Bailey's bow, he seems so at home in Sitka, where he feels the freedom flow, with room to stretch and grow.
Just the walk in itself, kind of the eagles. There's never a dull moment when nature's involved. Also music, quite frankly.
Zuill takes his cues from the light. If it's dark and brooding, he'll play in a minor key.
If it's a positive ray of sunshine, it feels like D major to me.
Zuill is a man who follows his instincts, who tries to tune in to what matters.
I'm continually surprised and invigorated by this community and their endless energy to keep up with the possibilities.
Sitka may be a long way from the mainstream of classical music, but Zuill believes it can help artists recharge.
Sitka is unlike any place they've ever seen. It will give them energy that they didn't know they had, energy, creative energy.
Even in practice, you can feel the electricity. Nava Pearlman, the daughter of renowned violinist Yitzhak Pearlman, is an accomplished pianist in her own right. Since she arrived, Nava's been in constant rehearsal. She should be tired, but says she's thriving on the artistic freedom.
You're asked, who would you like to play with? What repertoire do you feel like doing?
What are you doing?
You know, you always want to be well matched with people you're playing with because you get a better product.
The chemistry here often leads to some exciting projects. In Anchorage, Zuill Bailey and Natasha Poremski performed a newly recorded Benjamin Britten Sonata, a risky, edgy piece of music that they tackled together in Sitka.
Zuill has a lot of passion and fire in his playing and a lot of sensitivity.
Poremski was a child prodigy known for her uncanny ability to interpret music, and Bailey says that helped.
Which is the swagger. I think the swagger is exactly what Natasha would be best described. It's a cocky confidence that this is the way it goes.
And I was a little apprehensive about it, but I was amazed.
I thought it was beautiful and very well played, and Zuill inspired me.
This was born in freedom. This was born in complete comfort, the Britten Sonata. It was born in Sitka.
In the entire history of the festival, no musician has ever been paid to perform.
I was asked by a major interviewer last year why I would spend time in Alaska, as much time as I do. And my follow-up question was to them, without answering, it's, you've never been to Alaska, have you? And the response was, no, I haven't. I said, because if you had been, you would never ask me that question. That's awesome.
The sounds of nature and the sounds of music, always in harmony here in Sitka. Zuill Bailey has been at the helm of the festival for 4 years now. He took over from Paul Rosenthal, a violinist who founded it more than 40 years ago. Back then, Rosenthal was a rising star, but moved to Alaska in search of creative freedom, which he found, but he missed his friends, so he started the festival to bring them here. And soon, artists from all over the world sought invitations to Rosenthal's musical oasis, a tradition that continues today. Well, Rosenthal is 75 and lives in Juneau with his wife, Linda, a jazz violinist. Well, up next, behind the scenes of a Zuill Bailey performance.
It's very personalized, very special, and the musicians know that when they give it, it's pure and it's gone.
What brings the best of the best to Alaska, why they play for free. When you go to a concert, all seems smooth and placid. Most of us, though, have no idea about what goes on backstage. And that's fine with musicians like Zuill Bailey and Nava Pearlman. But several years ago, they did give us a rare glimpse behind the scenes. Sitka's Centennial Hall is a unique place to perform. And practice.
Is it da-da-da or da-da-da-da? Yes. Yeah. I like it articulated like that.
Although Nava Pearlman has worked with Zuill Bailey for many years, this is her first Sitka Music Festival.
You're in front of a huge piece of glass and you're right on the water with the mountains sort of right on top of you.
Pearlman says the setting gives rehearsals a dreamy quality.
I mean, today, actually, Zuill and I were rehearsing, and we could see some sort of sea creatures in the water doing some sort of choreographed dance in there. I don't know what they were, but a lot of fins flipping around. And
After only a few days of practice, the audience arrives, anticipation builds.
I guess what I really appreciate is when you watch them play, they're obviously enjoying playing the music. That makes us enjoy it more too.
I think you need charisma and showmanship to carry classical music to a new generation.
Perfect night for music.
A perfect night to get a rare look backstage. Zuill Bailey performs later in the program. Others don't have as much time to prepare. It appears chaotic. People practicing different pieces of music at once in different rooms.
You're taking time way over there.
sorry.
And in the middle of all of this, Zuill's sons watch a video. They're used to tuning everything out. Zuill makes some notes from his last rehearsal.
My vision's going. Fours are looking like ones.
But the clock is easy to see. It's time to go on stage.
We're giving that for them at that very moment. It's very personalized, very special. And the musicians know that when they give it, it's pure and it's gone. and no regret.
The moods of Schumann are many. A musical conversation. And for many, it's over too soon. Still ahead, we sit down with Zuill Bailey. And that cello he's holding right now has a fascinating story, one that he's about to share with us. Aside from his role as artistic director of the Sitka Summer Music Festival, you'll find Zuill Bailey here in our state a lot, whether it's for the fall and winter classic series of concerts in Anchorage, a performance in Talkeetna, or at the Hiland Mountain Correctional Center for the women there. He's all over the place, and he is here with us right now. So, I have to ask this is because you're here so much, is Alaska kind of a passion project for you?
Alaska's home. Alaska feels like home. It's a very centering place. I felt it the first time I was here, which was 10 years ago. And the fact that I am now in this position as artistic director of the Sitka Summer Music Festival and series now, and that we're impacting the whole state is a blessing for me, and I hope for others that get to hear the impact of music.
Well, one of the things when you read the blurbs on Google about you, they'll say one of the best cellists of our modern day. You get accolades like that, but it's hard to imagine you just starting out with your instrument when you were a little kid. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I come from a musical family. My mom's a pianist. My dad's a clarinetist, both music educators. My sister a violinist, a few years older. One of the things that again kind of sculpted my future was that everything we did was around music and the arts. There was piano teaching in my house because my mom. They took us to youth symphony concerts all the time for entertainment. All of our friends were musicians and in the arts. So it made a lot of sense that we would be introduced to music at a young age. My sister.
And so what happened when you got introduced to the cello?
Well, it was inevitable that I would be taken to a symphony concert and I would look at an instrument and see that that would be the one that I would want. The true story is that I was running backstage at a youth symphony concert, and I ran into a girl holding a cello, and I broke it out of her hand, and the neck right here broke off. And I told my parents I want to play the cello. That was my first run-in with the cello. But around that same time, when they got me the cello, a very small cello, they said that when I played the notes, and I see you've got a great picture here, that was when I was 4 years old right there, I immediately wrapped my body around this instrument and couldn't stop playing it. I loved the sound of it. It was like the human voice, someone telling me something that I wanted to know more of.
Well, most parents have to nag their kids into practicing, but I guess that wasn't the case with you?
Well, I never saw it as practice. It was not even a hobby. It was, again, it was me. I didn't realize that until I was 40, by the way. In hindsight, it's very clear. But I just felt so good and so confident and so centered playing the cello. It made me feel happy. It was a safe place. And I knew it immediately. I couldn't put words to it. But I played my cello every day. They had to ask me to stop. And subsequently, at about 12 years old is when I decided that that's what I really wanted to do for my life.
So how did you come by this cello? Because it's several hundred years old.
Well, this is not the cello that I had when I was 4.
Thank goodness, huh?
Thank goodness. They're lots. There's a quarter size, half size, 3/4 size, and this is a full size. So I had a very nice cello, an appropriate cello in high school, an appropriate cello in college. But then I got into the real world, and as a professional living in New York City, I took my spare time and I went to violin shops. It would be like going to a Ferrari dealership and testing all their cars and deciding that you like the Lamborghini over the Ferrari or the Bentley over the Rolls Royce.
And they let you play
They did because they wanted to hear them. And they also had people coming in the shops that were investors that couldn't play, but they wanted to hear them as well. So I spent hours every day. Fast forward. for about 3 or 4 years, I did this, knowing I could never, ever achieve one financially, owning one. So I just blindly look at these instruments, and I wasn't really taken with the names anymore because I'd played 23 Stradivariuses. One day, I walked into a violin shop, and they brought me one of the greatest Stradivariuses on earth. And I played it, and it was literally like seeing a higher power, God. I looked at the sky, and I played, and I could not believe how perfect a sound it was. I played it for about 2 hours. About 2 hours in, they brought in this thing, and they laid it on the floor, and they said, try this one out too. I said, what is it? They said, just try it. Okay? So I played it, and it made the ugliest sound I've ever heard. Just, that was it. That was the sound it made. And I put it down immediately. And I played beautiful rainbows, angels, trumpets. And then I kept looking at this cello, and I played this one again, and this time I went, and I kind of I started working on the sound, realizing that it was the sound that I was creating. Long story shorter, they came back in about an hour later. I experimented with this one over and over, and I realized that that this one created my sound. The Stradivarius created the Stradivarius' sound, and I was along for the ride. And the man asked me, would you like to take one, as usual, to a concert that I was playing? And I said, yes, I would love to. He said, the Stradivarius? I said, no, I'll take the Matteo Gofriller, built in 1693. He goes, that's very interesting. He said, why? I said, because this will allow me to realize my dreams, and that will be someone else's dream that I have to go along to the ride with, the Stradivarius.
So how did you come to own this?
Well, this is, again, fate. I went with my heart on this one. And I went, and all I did for the next 2 days was practice getting to know this sound and realizing that I could create the Stradivarius' sounds on here, but so much more. So much more of a realistic ground, like sticking your hands in the earth kind of sound, like a Van Gogh painting where you see the paintbrush strokes in it. It's not so perfect, it's globule. So there's a lot of texture in this sound. So that concert that I played, I made some speech from the audience that the Bach cello suite that I was going to play was made during the lifetime of this cello. This cello was built when Bach was 8. So I proceeded to play. After the concert, a man came up to me and said, tell me about this cello. There's something with you in that cello. And again, longer story shorter, he ended up securing the cello for my lifetime use that day.
And so
an angel.
A cello like this is basically a museum piece.
They're priceless. I mean, you couldn't, that's why I'm saying that they should, it's one of 2 cellos on earth that has a rose carved right here on the finger, under the fingerboard. It's especially large. Another reason why I like it so much, it's shaped like a pear, very large here, so that it has massive bass tones. And you sit and you can kind of wallow in the sound, and it envelops.
Well, one of the things that's amazing for me sitting here and hearing you play is that I can just really feel the vibrations come from this instrument. Do you think that older instruments have more of that?
Well, I think it's kind of, if you relate to human beings a little bit, it's kind of like, you know so much more when you're older because you've just lived. And this is this cello. This cello has vibrated as a solid. It's a piece of wood here, piece of wood here, separate pieces of wood, different kinds of wood. You've got maple on the back and spruce on the top.
So do you know much about who has played this cello before you?
Well, I know that Misha Schneider of the Budapest String Quartet had it for his career in that quartet, which was a legendary quartet and traveled the world. I see you have a picture of him. He was one of the most kind human beings on earth. When people find out that I'm playing his cello, they get this warm smile on their face and say, you're so lucky to have basically his soul in that instrument to share with others.
Well, one of the things, too, about the Budapest Quartet is they were kind of a hot item in their day. Why?
Well, they were the beginning of the string quartet as a string quartet profession. They invented the idea that string quartet was the profession. Usually it was a side profession with members of an orchestra. And so they spent exorbitant amounts of time together getting ready for concerts, and it was all they did, and they toured the world for 40 or 50 years.
So that's quite a legacy. Well, one of the things that you are trying to build here in Alaska is a legacy for classical music. Now, you've been with the Sitka Summer Music Festival for some time. Yes. How has that evolved under your leadership?
Well, the sky's the limit, because Alaska is accepting all of these things that we're doing. The fact is, the vision was, when I first started coming here 10 years ago, was to make sure that everybody in this entire state had consistent culture and the arts and classical music all year long. Right around that time, we were able to secure Stevenson Hall in Sitka.
And we have some designs of Stevenson Hall. You've got big plans to expand it.
Well, we're doing that right now. We're in the capital campaign has just begun to make sure it's weatherproofed and solid for the entire year's presence of artists coming from around the world.
Well, it's a historic building
That's
on
right.
the Sheldon Jackson campus, but what do you want this building to do for the festival?
I wanted to represent, again, the arts in all of Alaska. Every artist and musician that comes to Sitka, to the festival or the seminars, will then tour the whole state. And in the end, it'll be a year-round presence through all of Alaska. So every single place, Barrow, Nome, White Mountain,
So
Alpine,
tell us about your trip to
Dead
Barrow.
Horse.
Well, Dead Horse.
I played in Dead Horse.
For who?
Oh, well, a lot of these trips up there were for the oil workers. Barrow was for,
How
of
did
course,
they react?
They reacted like I had shown them the sun. They could not, they asked us to stop. Please don't stop playing.
And how about in Barrow?
Barrow was interesting because many of the young kids had never seen a violin or a cello before, or of course heard the sounds. And then once I started kind of relating it to, this is the instrument that produces the sounds that you hear in those movies, or in those video games, or those other things. They couldn't believe that this oddly shaped, unusual instrument was that instrument.
Now, you don't travel to remote locations with this all the time, do you?
I don't, because even though I have a spectacular case and buy seats for it on the airplane, I usually travel to those places with a carbon fiber cello because of the elements, the weather. And the fact is you never know if it's going to be 40 below zero or not, or stuck outside for a little while where the wood would crack.
And you don't know if someone's going to bring you into the village on the back of a snow machine.
Which I did in White Mountain. I landed with a float plane on the water. I was picked up with a snowmobile and then a dog sled to get to where we were staying.
My goodness, what a story there. So let's talk a little bit about, before we leave here, some of your new recordings, because you've got some exciting work out there.
I've been very busy since I saw you last.
This one.
Well, this is a group, this is actually another CD repertoire that was kind of born here in Alaska. The Schumann and the Beethoven was created in rehearsal in Alaska, and we went and recorded it last year, and it just came out. So the Ying String Quartet and I made this for cello quintets, so it's quartet plus another cello. And that came out last week.
And you also have another one. You're a busy man.
Well, this was also a very personalized project with Natasha Peremsky, who they showed in the video earlier. And this is a live performance of the Prokofiev Symphonia Concertante, one of the last works he wrote. And Russian music is very prominent here in Alaska because of the connection with Alaska and Russia. So that was also a very personalized project that I relate through Alaska. That came out in the spring.
So all in all, do you feel like you have a special goal, something special to do here in Alaska that's on
Well, I'm doing it. I mean, every time I go to the Hiland prison or these villages and I see how music changes lives, you know, spiritually, physically, people relax. It gives hope. It heals. I want to come back, and we add more each season. And now I'm up to almost 4.5 months here a year.
Well, we are out of time, but you do have a little bit of a serenade to leave us with. I want to thank you for joining us. See you next week.